Raskolnikov walked through the city, his mind heavy with his mother's letter. Her words didn't just linger in his head, they were burning through his mind like crazy. It was already afternoon, and the city heat was brutal, so suffocating it made the air feel thick in his lungs. He wandered around in ragged clothes, starving with a bitter, anxious smile on his lips. He didn't even notice the cobblestones beneath his feet or the carriages passing by. He was completely lost in the storm raging inside his head. "No," he whispered into the heavy air like a vow to himself. "Not while I'm still alive." He knew exactly what his mother and sister were doing. They wrapped everything up in fancy words, but he saw the ugly, naked truth. His little sister Dounia wasn't just getting married, she was walking straight to an altar of sacrifice. She was selling her future, her body, and her soul just to buy him a shot at success. And 10 years from now, what would be left? A mother gone blind from crying while knitting, and a sister completely hollowed out from being touched by a man she despised. And what about him? Just a silent ghost they were destroying themselves to feed. He had to stop this, but look at him. Just a beggar, a starving student rotting away in a tiny, cramped room. Right then, as he dragged his feet through the blazing heat, the thought of murder crept right back into his mind. It was no longer just a haunting ghost in his head. Now, it had weight. It was becoming real. A steady pounding started echoing in his skull, and the street around him began to fade, as if the sun had completely gone out. He stumbled, desperately looking for a park bench, anything to grab onto as black spots swirled in front of his eyes. Then, through the days, a flash of torn silk caught his eye. It was a girl, no older than 15. She was staggering under the scorching sun, struggling to keep her head up. Her thin dress was ripped at the waist, barely hanging on by a thread, and her small scarf was slipping off her neck. She was completely wasted and totally helpless. Her face was red and swollen from the heat and the booze, until her knees finally gave out. She collapsed onto a wooden bench, her head tilted back, eyes closed to the world. Just a few steps away, a well-dressed, chubby guy was approaching with the creepy silence of a predator. His lips were red, his mustache carefully groomed, and his eyes were glued to that torn silk dress. Watching this unfold, Raskolnikov could almost feel the suffocating helplessness his sister was bound to face. Just thinking about it was enough to ignite a wild, angry fire in his chest. Without thinking, he rushed straight at the man, pointed right in his face, and snapped, "Hey you! Stay the hell away from her!" The fancy guy's face twisted in shock. He raised his cane arrogantly, but Raskolnikov didn't care. He was ready to tear him apart with his bare hands. Before the cane could swing down, a firm, heavy grip caught his shoulder. A police officer had stepped in between them, gasping and shaking. Raskolnikov grabbed the officer's solid arm. "Look at her," he pleaded, his voice breaking with raw, desperate empathy. "She's just a kid. Someone got her drunk, put these clothes on her, and dumped her out here. And this bastard is just watching her like it's some kind of game." The officer, an older man with weathered skin but kind eyes, looked at the wrecked girl and let out a heavy sigh. He knew this story all too well. Raskolnikov frantically dug through his pockets until his fingers touched cold metal, 20 kopecks, the last coins he had. He pressed them into the officer's rough hand. "Get her a carriage. Take her home, please. Just keep her away from him." The officer nodded gently and reached out toward the girl. But the kid, lost in a drunken haze, muttered something incoherent, swiped his hand away, and stumbled further down the boulevard, walking a tightrope straight toward her own doom. And the fancy guy? He just adjusted his jacket and started following her from a distance, patient as a vulture. The officer swore he wouldn't let the creep touch her and rushed after them both. Raskolnikov just stood there, watching them disappear into the heat. And then, quiet as a falling leaf, something inside his exhausted mind snapped. The righteous flame, the desperate urge to save someone, all gone, drained away, leaving behind nothing but a cold, icy void. The monster inside him had woken up. "Hey!" Raskolnikov shouted suddenly, his voice rough and mocking. The officer stopped and turned around. "Just let them go," he yelled. "What do you care? Let him have her. Let them eat each other alive." The officer looked back in sheer horror. He shook his head in utter disgust and kept running. Maybe right then, he saw the disgusting, rotten side of Raskolnikov. A heavy silence fell over the avenue. Raskolnikov collapsed onto the exact bench the girl had just left. He was alone, completely and utterly alone. He stared at the empty space beside him. Why did he give away his last coin? What right did he have to play the savior? Then he started making cold excuses for what he had just witnessed, judging those corrupt people as bound for hell, destined to face the devil. But what if Dounia ended up in a situation like that? Would she find salvation, or would her choices force her to face the devil too? The question hung in the suffocating air, waiting for an answer that would never come. Suddenly, a strange realization washed over him. He looked down at his feet, which had been carrying him toward a destination he had wanted to go to all along, even before the letter, even before meeting that girl on the bench. He was heading toward the house of Razumihin, an old university friend. A guy built like a bear, filled with unbreakable optimism and a simple, deep kindness. Why had his fractured mind brought him here? What was he hoping to find behind Razumihin's door? Salvation? Or an excuse for what was about to happen? The question lingered as the late afternoon sun cast long, heavy shadows on the cobblestones, along with the quiet, terrifying hum of a soul standing right on the edge of an abyss, looking down into the darkness, deciding whether or not to jump.